Okay. Thank you so much, Bill, and a huge thanks to Siobhan for such moving work and a real contribution to the field. And I'm feeling awful coming after her, but here you go. And I will tell you a little bit about our experience with biobanking. And along with Bill and many of you in the audience, we have all been doing what we like to call translational research or biobanking over many years now. And it's really grown into something that is a lot more solid, a lot more informative, and done under much greater rigor. Are they moving forward? Okay, perfect. Sorry. So I was just going to tell you a tiny bit about the types of collections that we have in our cancer centre to give you a type of flavour of research that can be done and hopefully what can be achieved. So our cancer centre opened about 2 years ago, and for that process we had to undergo OECI accreditation. So we gathered together the translational activity that had been happening in the hospital to bring together a more united, better controlled collection of patient tissue. So this is just some of the C trial studies that we have currently open or just recently closed. So altogether we've approximately 5,000 patients that have gone through translational clinical trials within the hospital. So this has given us an enormous resource from which to do research that is actually relevant to the patient. And not only that, and to go a little bit to what Siobhan was saying, this is also a real way of getting patients involved in research. It obviously is not a interventional clinical trial, but it is something in which a patient can take part in. There is often an awful lot more monitoring with these studies, and also it's an idea for the patient to actually take charge of their disease and also hopefully provide information that their sons and daughters may not have to go through the same journey that they did. We really are moving towards having this more formalised, and in that case we really like all of our biobanking and translational trial activity to be a full clinical trial, and Cancer Trials Ireland has really opened up the path for this. And I must say this is in huge thanks to Verena, who's really established an enormous resource for translational researchers like myself to drive our work through in terms of clinical trial. More recently we are going for full ISO accreditation. And for those of you who don't work in a hospital, you probably never need to hear the words ISO. Please stay away from it. It's an absolute nightmare. It's also very expensive. So the initial application cost is going to cost approximately 70 grand. And we've just passed through phase 1 and we're now entering phase 2, and we are hoping to be fully accredited by June. But this work is enormously burdensome, but I think it's going to help us to share our material with our colleagues. And I'm looking at Liam here, I've just dragged him into so many of my studies and he's always been supportive. Is that our ability to share the material is collected in a very rigorous way. Also that material that is collected, we will be able to use to feedback the patient in terms of their management, if rare mutations arise that may be important. So all of this is worth it. And it is worth doing these trials under that sense of rigour. So I just wanted to tell you a tiny bit about the trial that I lead. And this is with Arnie Hill and Patrick Morris in our cancer centre. So this is the 0907 clinical trial that's run with the support of Cancer Trials Ireland, and in particular Verena and Aisha, who's here as well. Can't see you now. So we have almost 5,000 patients who have been recruited to this clinical trial. And because we're the National Neurosurgical Centre, our particular focus is on patients that end up advancing to have breast cancer brain metastasis. But I just wanted to show you today about the kind of the downscale. So we can start off very broad and do clinical studies with all patients that are recruited. If we've imaging, we do what we call a topography or where in the brain, to determine if there is significance to where in the brain that these tumours are arising. And as we go down further, we have matched primary and brain metastatic patients, and now this is the largest cohort of matched primary and brain metastatic tumours in the world. And we've undertaken whole genome sequencing, or bulk RNA sequencing, And more recently, because of the mutations that occur from a primary to a metastatic siting, are often not hardcore DNA mutations, but much lighter mutations, such as occurs with methylation, both in the DNA and the RNA. And these are hugely actionable alterations. And as what Siobhan was saying, that there is really no focus on patients with metastatic disease, and there's very, very few targeted therapeutics. And unless we undertake this type of work to uncover new therapies, we will continue to fail our patients who have not done well on their original therapeutic path. So we are not coming up with anything new. It's just a reiteration of the same thing. And I'll give you one example. In brain metastasis, 30% of patients change their molecular subtype from primary to metastatic disease. And yet, clinically, most institutions will treat those patients based on what their primary tumour looks like. And that's just no longer acceptable. But unless, as Siobhan said, we can find the evidence and present it, then clinical practice will not change. So, very final bit that we're doing now is spatial transcriptomics, and this work is actually being undertaken by Bill's daughter Louise, who we're very fortunate to have working with us. So we now have 4 patients on this study, and we are looking at patients who had metastasis to the cerebellum versus the cerebral cortex, and we're matching those transcriptomic changes back to the overall patient to see if we can find new therapeutic targets. And one target that we have is called ADAM22, and myself and my fellow researchers, Arnie Hill and Damir Vareshlia, who unfortunately can't be with us today, set up a little spin-out company which we're trying to develop a therapy against this, and we're hoping eventually we'll be able to bring it to the clinic, and I'll be able to come back and tell you how that fared. But the most important thing is to look at this as a whole picture. So to look at changes in new drug targets that can alter under various mechanisms of regulation, because it's those targets that will not have drug resistance because they're much tighter controls and less manipulation can occur. So this is just to give you a flavour of more national biobanking, and this is really pulled together under the SFI Partnership Programme with Walter Kolsch and Liam Gallagher. And it's been really transformative, because what we've done together as a community is we've come together to talk about biobanking and to have a sort of an iterative or indexing biobank. So we know of all of the biobanking activity that's going on throughout the country. And as we were kind of first to start with our ISO accreditation journey, now Galway and others are joining us on this journey. So we're hoping that nationally we will have a collection of cancer biobanking material that's all ISO accredited. I would really like to call out all of the charities that are the backbone of this work. The Irish Cancer Society, obviously, but in addition, Breast Cancer Ireland, who I mentioned earlier, and the English Breast Cancer Now charity have also been substantial, as well as the Brain Bank and the esophageal cancers charities. Sorry. So this is just my very last slide. I just wanted to give you a feel for it. This is not tissue that sits in a freezer and then that we do some genomics on it every so often and hopefully get a publication, which is obviously very good. But it is real, and it does make real life changes. And I've just put up a couple of publications here that we've recently had out. The first one is from Joachim Pren's group looking at primary brain tumours. And the second one was that study that I was telling you about, where we looked at alterations between the primary and the brain metastatic tumour. But more importantly, and I think going forward, I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of clinical trials that have directly arisen out of this work. One is the Panther trial, the other one is Shamrock that Bill had mentioned earlier, and more recently myself and Patrick are undertaking the Primrose study, which is specifically again looking at brain metastasis. The challenges that I want to discuss with you later include obviously regulation and the dreaded DPOs, national funding structures, which are, I don't know why that's even up because there just are none, clinical and scientist engagement, which I think the whole cancer centre phenomenon has just changed that landscape completely. It's blown it wide open, and it's just been amazing. And then also what I kind of alluded to earlier, unless accreditation systems like Mission for Cancer, like the OECI, actually appreciate clinical trials and put them in their metrics for clinical trial activity, it won't be ever valued by governments, and therefore will remain as is. Thank you so much.